A smile never left Bonnie Lipton's face as she drove her BMW onto a busy Atlanta freeway. Despite knowing she would arrive home later than expected, she easily brushed it off, considering it just another consequence of the infamous Atlanta traffic jams. The delay was nothing compared to the pleasure Nick had brought into her life. With almost a decade of age difference, Nick was not only a passionate lover but also possessed undeniable charm. Handsome, intelligent, a wonderful conversationalist, he had the energy of youth, which gave Bonnie cheerfulness. Remembering her husband Ron, Bonnie couldn't help feeling guilty about the secret affair. At 44, Ron didn't have the stamina Nick did, but he made up for it with his experience and understanding of Bonnie's body, making their intimate life incredibly enjoyable. After meeting Nick, there was nothing better than going home and falling asleep in his arms with the realization that she had the best of both worlds. Her smile grew even wider as she moved away from Atlanta. Thoughts of Nick began to fade. Although he was fun to be with, her heart belonged to Ron and her daughter Casey. Bonnie was eager to spend more time with her loved ones. Now she felt satisfied and fulfilled in her intimate relationships. She was aware of and accepted her emotions, knowing she could now be patient and affectionate with Ron, her amazing husband. Their daughter Casey was a talented athlete and a capable student with a wide range of friends from sports teams and school clubs. Casey's friends often gathered at their house on weekends, and Bonnie enjoyed chatting with them. They seemed to admire her as a positive authority in their lives. Bonnie made sure to always be immaculately dressed. As a highly qualified specialist in an architectural firm, she held a prestigious position in society, together with her husband Ron, who ran his family's thriving construction company. They were a well-known and respected couple. Despite his busy schedule, Ron always found time to attend all of their daughter Casey's school activities. Bonnie treasured the moments when she sat next to Ron and watched their daughter shine on stage or on the field. She knew that several fathers couldn't help but look at her, but she couldn't help but notice that many mothers looked at Ron as if he were their prey. Even when Bonnie was sitting next to him, women still found a way to strike up a conversation with him and flirt. Her attractive husband didn't seem to notice all this, but Bonnie couldn't ignore it. After a long drive, Bonnie parked in the garage and discovered that her husband's pickup truck was missing. Bonnie was stunned by the unusual and unexpected situation she found herself in. After a difficult business conference and a tedious trip home, she hoped that her husband would meet her. But when she entered the empty house and went to the bedroom, she could not get rid of the feeling of anxiety that settled in her soul. It was almost time for dinner, and her family was still nowhere to be seen. Since Ron was never late at work and Casey was at school, they should have been home by now. Tomorrow was Thursday, and the thought of their absence only added to Bonnie's growing sense of unease. Bonnie unpacked her things and headed for the shower, thinking about the mysterious disappearance of Ron and Casey. She suddenly realized that her phone was turned off. It had been turned off since the previous dinner. On the way home, she was lost in her thoughts and didn't even think about why no one had tried to contact her. Perhaps Ron was upset that she hadn't called and thanked him for the pearls the night before. She had been so caught up in her emotions, fueled by Nick's presence, that she had completely forgotten about Ron. After drying her hair with a towel, she turned on her phone. Ron couldn't help but feel proud of his clever and thoughtful idea of surprising his wife. He had known about the upcoming conference in Atlanta for several months since Bonnie regularly attended them. It so happened that this particular conference coincided with the 20th anniversary of their wedding. A few weeks earlier, Ron had been offered a project to build a luxury vacation home for a family from Atlanta. After finishing a business conversation with a client, Boyd Drake, Ron felt at ease and decided to share a new idea. "Boyd, our anniversary will be on the 10th of next month. My wife will be at a conference in downtown Atlanta. I thought it would be a great surprise to treat her and her colleagues to a special dinner at one of the nearby restaurants. To make it even more memorable, I bought a pearl necklace that I would like to deliver to her table during the meal," Ron said. "My daughter could take over the organization of delivering the necklace to your wife. She is already in college and knows all the best places in the city," Boyd suggested. "I have special plans for the time of my wife's return home," Ron replied. "Then, instead of relying on your daughter, why don't you accompany your wife to Atlanta yourself and personally hand over the necklace during dinner?" Boyd asked. "I've offered to do this before, but Bonnie always said she was too busy to spend time with me." Most likely, she will have dinner late and immediately return to the hotel to rest before the next day. That's why I want to surprise her, Ron replied. It seemed ridiculous to Boyd to come all this way and be ignored, given his official duties, but he had another idea. How about we treat my daughter and her friend to dinner in exchange for a live video on Facebook of them sitting at the table next to Bonnie? Boyd suggested. I'd like to see Bonnie's reaction when she opens the box with the necklace inside, Ron replied. Boyd agreed and said he would give his daughter contact information so they could surprise her. I'm sure she'll be happy to help with that, Boyd assured Ron. Ron ordered some pizzas for the 20th wedding anniversary party he was hosting at his house. Among the guests were his parents, Bonnie's parents, his brother and sister-in-law, as well as Bonnie's younger, divorced sister. Everyone was looking forward to Bonnie's appearance because Ron had prepared a special anniversary gift for her. In addition to the adult guests, Ron's 16-year-old daughter Casey and several of her friends were present at the celebration. Ron had prepared everything for a big surprise. A video was already ready on the big TV screen. Boyd's daughter was sitting next to Bonnie, trying not to arouse suspicion. She sent the video over Facebook Live, unnoticed. She bribed the waiter to bring a gift to Bonnie and her colleague Sue as soon as they placed an order for food. Ron was looking forward to Bonnie's reaction, watching what was happening in real time. He was beaming with delight as he explained, "This is going to be our best anniversary, even though we are miles away from each other." He made sure that no sound came from their side. "Wow, what a great idea!" Casey exclaimed. When Bonnie appeared holding hands with a handsome young man, she asked, "Who is this guy with Mom?" "I thought she was supposed to be with Sue." "I don't know who he is, but he seems to be a pretty close friend," Ron admitted with a shrug. Bonnie's father made a disapproving sound and frowned at Ron's words. When the couple took their seats, everyone gathered around Ron's TV could easily hear their conversation. "Your husband is so generous that he treated us to dinner tonight. I will make sure that this anniversary is remembered, especially for you. She will definitely overshadow your honeymoon," the stranger said with a laugh. Bonnie grinned back. "Then you'd better order a steak. You will need all your strength. Your honeymoon was unforgettable, wasn't it? Or did you have a lover then?" "Because I don't believe that your husband is so wonderful," the stranger replied, laughing all the time. Bonnie expressed her gratitude by saying, "Ron did a great job, thanks for asking. You're the only lover I've had in the last 20 years, apart from Ron, of course." Fortunately, he's starting to slow down. Grinning, the man reassured Bonnie, "The good news is that you're going to have a much more special 20th anniversary today than most women. I'll take care of it, sister." Bonnie, feeling awkward, suggested, "Maybe we've seen enough. This is not quite right. Bonnie doesn't know at all what we're watching and listening to. Why don't you turn off the video? We don't want to miss Bonnie's reaction when she gets her necklace, do we? Let's watch their wonderful dinner for a while longer," Ron replied decisively but with a red face from anger. While the couple was ordering, everyone heard Bonnie call her companion Nick. Then, as the waiter was taking away their menu, another waiter came up with a beautifully wrapped package. "Look, Ron probably delivered a gift for my wedding anniversary," Bonnie exclaimed. Bonnie gasped with delight when she opened the package. "Oh, this is amazing," she exclaimed, holding out a string of pearls. "Will you help me put it on?" she asked Nick. "Of course," he replied, carefully putting the necklace around her neck. At the same time, his hands touched Bonnie's chest. "You have a very romantic husband," the woman at the next table remarked. "You are very lucky to have such a handsome man." "Absolutely," Nick agreed, grinning. Bonnie had a loving husband and a charming boyfriend. She glanced at Nick, but the more experienced women just laughed at his remark. "I gave you a pearl necklace yesterday, which I think suits you much better than this," Nick teased, bending down to kiss Bonnie on the lips. "That's the difference between a spouse and a lover," Bonnie smiled maliciously. A girl with fiery red hair, who must have been Boyd's daughter, sadly whispered, "Husbands give us jewelry, and lovers make promises." "I can't do this anymore," she turned the phone around, her eyes filled with regret. "I should have seen this coming, but I was too shocked to react. I'm sorry for everything. I'll delete it all from my phone." With a heavy heart, she stood up and said, "It's time for me to leave." The TV turned off, and a heavy silence reigned in the room. One of Casey's friends broke the silence with a hesitant voice. "It's already quite dark. It's time to go home. I'll see you at school tomorrow." "If I go at all," Casey said, her eyes filling with tears. "Dad, can I go home with my friends?" she asked, feeling the need to be with them at this moment. "Of course, honey. We can talk about it tomorrow. Drive carefully, girls," Ron said in a hoarse whisper, his throat dry. Bonnie's mother stood at a loss. "I think we misunderstood the situation. Bonnie genuinely cares about you, Ron, and she would do anything for Casey. Please don't act hastily," she said. The other guests, gathered at Ron's, shared his opinion and calmly discussed the problem. After thinking about it for a while, Ron came to a conclusion. "I need time to think about everything. Please give me some time to think about my next steps. You can all go now." As soon as the guests left, Ron began packing his suitcase, preparing for the upcoming trip. Meanwhile, Bonnie was overwhelmed by the flood of messages and missed calls that awaited her after she turned off her phone the night before. When she scrolled through the notifications, she was horrified. Her sister and mother demanded answers to questions about Nick and questioned her relationship with him. Accusations that she broke Ron's heart and upset Casey flooded all of her inboxes, and relatives bombarded her with a dozen messages each. Bonnie flipped through her messages, hoping to see a message from Ron, but found nothing. She couldn't help but wonder how her family found out about Nick and what they really knew. Where were Ron and Casey? How did she get out of the hole she's in? It was extremely important for her to find out the extent of Ron's awareness as well as what he only suspected. Bonnie came to the conclusion that she needed to talk to her family to assess the seriousness of her situation. Taking a deep breath, she dialed her mom's number. "Mom, it's me," she said, preparing for the difficult conversation ahead. Bonnie tried to stay calm and began, "I completely forgot that I turned off my phone last night. I noticed that you tried to contact me. Is everything okay?" Mom answered sharply, "Is everything okay? Oh, only if you think that losing your husband, losing your daughter, humiliating your parents, and behaving like a loose woman is the norm for you. I don't think it bothers you too much because you're happy to flaunt a gorgeous pearl necklace from your boyfriend." Bonnie retorted that Ron had given her a string of pearls for their anniversary. "You take us for fools. Your father and I understand perfectly well what you were talking about with your lover. We are already too old not to understand your hints," her mother replied. "Mom, what makes you think that I would do something like that? What makes you think I have a boyfriend?" Bonnie asked, feeling a knot of fear tighten inside her. "Don't play games with me. I'm not stupid," his mother growled. "Ron kindly invited us home to witness the grand opening of his gift for your 20th wedding anniversary. He had the foresight to book a table for you and your colleague Sue. The scene was quite revealing as we watched everything that was happening. You mentioned that husbands give jewelry and lovers give pleasant memories," her mother said. Bonnie was stunned and asked if she had heard correctly. "Ron arranged with his friend's daughter to broadcast live from her phone," she replied. "He wanted us to see your delight at his gift. Then we planned to call and congratulate you on your anniversary," her mother said, and there was sadness in her voice. "It looks like this could be your last anniversary, at least with Ron. Maybe when everything calms down, you can see your lover again," she added sarcastically. "Mom, you know I love Ron. This other man means nothing to me. It was just a way to pass the time." These conferences were incredibly boring, Bonnie tried to justify herself. Her mother grumbled, "Ron will feel much better knowing that his wife is not a cheater but just a bored housewife." Bonnie rolled her eyes at her insults. "How are you going to convince Ron that he's the only man you love if you haven't even convinced me?" the mother asked. "It looks like I have a lot of work to do," Bonnie replied, looking at her with disdain. "That man is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen," the mother said coldly. Bonnie doubted that Ron found the situation any better after talking to her mother. She remembered that her whole family had witnessed a conversation with Nick during dinner the night before. Remembering her conversation with Nick, Bonnie was acutely aware of the gravity of her situation. Deciding that she needed someone to talk to, she turned to Casey. "Casey," Bonnie asked, "where are you?" "I'm with Morgana," Casey answered the phone, she's trying to comfort me while I come to terms with the fact that my family is falling apart, the daughter replied. Casey, your father and I are not ending our relationship. Please come home so that we can discuss everything. By the way, where's your father? Bonnie asked cautiously. He moved into a cottage by the lake. I don't think he wants to see you. He was thrilled last night when he invited everyone to watch you open your gift. His heart broke when you came with your lover and not with Sue, Casey replied. Please come home, Bonnie begged desperately, hoping to find the right words to make amends to her daughter and husband. Bonnie's heart began to race as she looked around the house. Ron's office had no laptop, no filing cabinets, and looked empty and abandoned. Even the closet in his bedroom was empty. Tears welled up in Bonnie's eyes as she walked through the house, noting all the missing items. The absence of her photographs only increased the feeling of hopelessness. Trying to take her mind off her failed marriage, Bonnie decided to cook dinner for Casey. By the time Casey got home, Bonnie had prepared a small dinner, but Casey looked distant and only answered Bonnie's questions briefly. Bonnie admitted that her daughter had every right to be offended by her but hoped that over time, the tension between them would at least decrease. At dawn the next morning, Bonnie walked into their lake house and found Ron hunched uncomfortably on a small couch, fast asleep. The floor was littered with empty beer cans. Ron, dear, we need to talk. Can you wake up, please? She begged. Ron slowly opened his eyes with a groan and, without saying a word, headed for the bathroom. Resigned, Bonnie decided to make coffee while waiting for her husband to return. After a while, Ron, who had just taken a shower, returned to the kitchen where Bonnie was waiting for him. She put the mug in front of him, hoping that he would finally start the difficult conversation she had been waiting for, but it quickly became clear that Ron was not interested in opening up. Ron, I'm really sorry about what happened. I really appreciate the pearls that you gave me, they are very dear to me. It's just a pity that I didn't know you were gathering our family at home. It would be nice if you informed me about this, Ron answered sharply and harshly. Don't you dare talk to me. Nothing is going to help our relationship, Ron added, his anger simmering at Bonnie's attempt to portray him as an abuser. Bonnie, stunned by Ron's uncharacteristic tone, felt the pain of realizing how much hurt she had caused him. Calming down, Bonnie replied, Tell me, what should I do to fix this? You're the only man I've ever loved, and that hasn't changed. Together we can handle this. Tell me, what problem are you trying to solve? Is it a problem that I surprised you with an anniversary gift at a nice restaurant, where I booked a table for you and your lover? Or is it that my client's daughter agreed to send a video recording of your reaction? Perhaps the problem lies in my mistaken belief that you would appreciate this gift. Please clarify this issue so that I can understand what you're talking about, Ron asked calmly. You know what the problem is, Bonnie said firmly. Why do you think this is a problem? Ron asked. You know perfectly well why this is a problem. At first, I told you I was going to dinner with Sue, but I ended up going with Nick. You overheard our conversation and found out that we slept together. That's the problem we need to solve, Bonnie replied desperately. So, the problem is that I, like your whole family, overheard your conversation, Ron asked to clarify the situation, or maybe the problem is that you're getting into relationships with other men. Ron persisted in asking questions. Bonnie's cheeks turned red when she realized that defensiveness wasn't helping her. I tried to take care of you on our anniversary. You didn't do anything to deserve this. Now explain why you've been cheating for so long and with how many men is Casey my biological daughter? Ron asked. Maybe your father was a postman, Ron asked sarcastically. Bonnie, clearly taken aback, replied, There's no reason to be rude or offensive. Casey is definitely your daughter. Nick has been my only partner since we started dating. Your comment about my past lovers and the suggestion that Casey's father is a postman were just rude. It's difficult for me to understand your reasoning. Do you admit that you were unfaithful but refuse to admit the extent of your promiscuity? Ron replied. You expect me to be polite and understanding, as well as naive, when you admit that you're a woman who walks around. Are you proud that you cheat on me only occasionally? And what about Nick? How long have you been sleeping with him and how often? You conveniently omitted these details when you were trying to clear your name as a libertine, Ron shouted. Nick and I were intimate only 3 times, Bonnie confessed tearfully, finally realizing the extent of Ron's anger. Besides you, he's the only man I've been intimate with since we got married 2 decades ago. We spent 2 nights together at each of the 3 conferences, Bonnie said. Have you been anywhere else with him? Asked Ron. No, this has only happened a total of 6 times, and I sincerely regret it. I owe you an apology, Bonnie replied. Are you saying that a young guy like Nick can only be with you once a night? Ron asked. Why did you sleep with another man? Ron asked, disappointed. Was our relationship so bad that you had to seek pleasure elsewhere? Bonnie explained that she was bored and vulnerable, and he persistently pursued her. It's not about you, she reassured him. I made a mistake. It's not about you or our closeness. It's more about my vanity or maybe a midlife crisis. He doesn't mean anything to me, I promise you, Bonnie said. You were in a relationship with a man who meant nothing to you, Ron repeated. We just had an affair. He was attractive, but nothing more, Bonnie clarified. So he's not important to you at all? Ron asked. Ron continued, you confessed to me that you slept with a man you didn't care about. Does our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, fall into this category? Why not give yourself to him? Bonnie, feeling foolish, replied, I never said that I sleep with every man who means nothing to me. Nick attracted me with his looks, charm, and achievements. He was courting me. But does that mean I'll only have intimate relationships with attractive, successful men who court me? Does that, with rare exceptions, make me an unfaithful wife? Bonnie asked. If you don't have feelings for the men you date, then you don't love me either? Ron asked. No, I admit I made a huge mistake, and I promise it won't happen again, Bonnie said, her voice full of emotion. I love you, not Nick, she added. How can I be sure of that? Ron asked softly. At our wedding and many times after, you swore to be faithful to me. You're stunning, successful, and men will always pursue you. I don't know if I can trust you, Ron said. You won't be able to satisfy me in bed the way I want, but don't doubt my love for you. Our intimate moments are special to me, and I feel cherished, Bonnie assured him. Ron asked her why she kept going back to Nick. Bonnie admitted that with Nick, she felt special, not just a mother or a wife. It wasn't love that attracted her to him, but the excitement of doing something forbidden. Ron was trying to figure out why she would do more for a man who meant nothing to her. Ron thought about the words he had said, for the person you love, he reasoned. Memories of their honeymoon came back to him when she promised to love only him. Ron recalled this moment with a sense of resentment, wondering if he and Nick had exchanged secret jokes about him. But Bonnie reassured him by saying that Nick never spoke ill of Ron. I would never let that happen, Bonnie confirmed. But Ron couldn't shake the memory of overhearing a conversation in which he was repeatedly insulted, and Bonnie seemed to agree with that. I can't erase it from my memory, Ron whispered, feeling a mixture of confusion and pain in his heart. Ron suddenly came to his senses and spoke, Why are we wasting our time here at all? You found someone new. Fine, I guess I need to find someone too. Why pretend you want to stay married? It's pretty obvious you didn't enjoy being my wife. And let's not even talk about it, he confessed. You're beautiful, successful, and smart, and I didn't bring anything. It was only a matter of time before you started looking for something better. I swore to give you a better 20th anniversary than most wives, and I did. So it's time to move on. Congratulations, you found what you were looking for, he added. Ron, we can't let this conversation end on such a sour note. We have to communicate and find a solution, Bonnie pleaded, tears in her eyes. You can ask your lawyer to contact mine. Our relationship is over, Bonnie. I'm filing for divorce. You pushed me, said Ron. That day, Bonnie went to work, but in the break room, she ran into an angry Sue. Why did Ron ask me about how you and I went to Atlanta for a conference? Sue asked, feeling hurt. You know I stopped going after you started spending nights with that Romeo from the Chicago office. I don't want to be used as a cover for your infidelity, Ron called you. What did you tell him? Bonnie asked, feeling depressed. I told him the truth, that I didn't go to the last 2 conferences. I thought you told him that we were going to share a room and hold conferences together, Bonnie replied resentfully. Sue looked at her with disdain, feeling cheated. I'm shocked that I'm being used in this way, Sue said. It won't happen again. Ron found out about my whole trip. I think he's going to leave me, Bonnie confessed. Did you think it would happen after that? No noble person would tolerate such mistreatment, Sue replied to her. I was stupid and selfish. I didn't think about the consequences of Ron finding out the truth, and now he's gone, Bonnie said sadly. Don't you realize that your actions, when you slept with that disgusting man from Chicago, sealed your fate? Sue said, this time with a note of disgust. Sue spoke in a softer tone. I'm sorry that you lost Ron, but I tried to warn you about this outcome. I want you to know that I didn't tell him myself, if that's what you're thinking. I understand, Sue. I owe you an apology. I took advantage of our friendship. I'm sorry I didn't take your advice, but I thought I knew better. Ron deserves better than me, Bonnie replied. After learning about Bonnie's infidelity, Ron decided to take a day off from work. He decided to move all his belongings to the lake house before Bonnie returned. He didn't want to listen to her excuses and apologies for her betrayal. The thought of having to live without Bonnie saddened him, but he couldn't accept her callous disregard for his emotions and indifference to loyalty and respect. Her unexpected appearance the next day only underlined the huge emotional distance between them. She offered no explanation that would help him forgive her infidelity. The day after meeting with the lawyer, he was preparing to leave the office to meet with the divorce lawyer when a new letter appeared in his mailbox. It was from Bonnie. A wave of indecision swept over him. He wondered whether to read this letter or just delete it. After some internal reflection, he decided to open the letter. Bonnie, in her usual direct manner, had already answered the question. When he read her message, he was overcome by a feeling of despair. Ron, I know I screwed up a lot this time, she wrote. I made the mistake of thinking that I could hide my actions from you and that they would not hurt you. I was stupid to think that lying and cheating wouldn't affect our marriage. You deserve honesty and respect. I am truly sorry, and I hope that you will find the strength in your heart to forgive me. I will not interfere with the decisions you make regarding our marriage. I love you, and I want the best for you. You are a wonderful man, husband, and father. I take full responsibility for what happened. I admit the truth, although I regret the harm I have caused to our relationship. Despite all the doubts, my love for you remains unshakable. Bonnie's words of confession and her sincere request for forgiveness deeply affected Ron. It was typical of her to take responsibility for her mistakes. By thinking about the situation, she was an unwavering woman who made high demands on herself and others. Ron was overwhelmed with grief and did not consider it necessary to reply to her letter. Ever since Bonnie showed up at Ron's lake house that morning, Casey had been the only one who could say anything to Ron. On Friday afternoon, Casey informed Bonnie that she would spend the weekend at her father's cabin and Ron would bring her home on Sunday evening. Bonnie realized that this had become the new normal for her. The weekend passed in agony as she reflected on the mess she had made in her life and didn't know how to fix it. Had she done irreparable damage to her once happy marriage? When Casey returned home on Sunday evening, she looked depressed. Dad wants a divorce. He can't bear to be with a woman who no longer respects him. I saw him crying several times over the weekend, which had never happened before. Do you understand the pain you caused him? Casey informed her, feeling the full weight of her actions. Bonnie couldn't help but wonder if her lover was really better than her husband. I never meant to offend your father. No one can compare to him, Bonnie said softly. It was a serious mistake, and I am very sorry. Your father is really the most wonderful person I've ever known. Please forgive us both for our doubts, Bonnie said. Casey's tone was accusatory. This isn't the first time you've met this man, is it? You've been hiding this from us for years. Bonnie realized that she could no longer maintain this facade. I slept with him at 3 previous conferences. It was a mistake, and I deeply regret it. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Is that all you want to say, Mom? You betrayed your father in the most terrible way. Didn't you promise to be faithful when you married him? Did you secretly hope that it wouldn't matter? Casey said angrily. I understand that you're upset with me, but I'm even more upset with myself, Bonnie said. Dad is a wonderful man and a wonderful father, you know? Casey almost screamed that I have done does not reflect. My attitude towards him was a mistake, Bonnie said reluctantly. I miss you, Casey, Bonnie confessed. Casey simply replied, whatever you say, and then retired to her room. When their relationship became strained, Bonnie found solace in work, but even there she couldn't escape Sue's cold attitude towards her. Attending Casey's school events only emphasized the distance between them, as Bonnie often sat alone unless accompanied by her mother. Ron's presence at these events only increased her discomfort, as he tried to keep his distance from her. Other parents couldn't help but notice the tension between them. The news of their impending divorce spread quickly, with Bonnie eavesdropping on inappropriate comments from fathers, both single and married, who knew that rumors of her infidelity had reached society. Meanwhile, Ron plunged into his work, finding solace in his business amid the chaos. Ironically, Bonnie ended up getting half of the business. Although Ron's lawyer tried various strategies to mitigate the situation, Bonnie was stunned when the lawyer informed her that Ron had decided to give her half of his share in the business. It was an unexpected turn of events, especially considering that just a few years earlier, Ron's close friend Dan had made a deal to buy out the company during the financial crisis. Ron insisted that without Bonnie's contribution, they would have nothing to live on. The court could not deny the truthfulness of his words. Dan, as a silent partner, owned 1/3 of the company, but by transferring half of their joint ownership to Bonnie, Ron found himself in a situation where he owned and controlled only 1/3 of the business. Bonnie told her lawyer that this was unfair to Ron, since he was the one who had invested all his time and energy in the business. She suggested that if Ron insisted on giving her a share, then she was ready to agree to 1/10 of their property. This way, Ron would be able to maintain control of the business without potential disputes. Ron turned out to be incredibly stubborn. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't even get Ron to talk to her on the phone. He completely cut her out of his life. Meanwhile, Casey expressed a desire to spend the summer at the lake house between junior and senior years of school. Bonnie realized that this was another way for Casey to punish her and reluctantly agreed that she deserved her daughter's offense. Ron was very pleased with this result. He carefully developed plans to expand the hut, increasing its area by almost half. Having experience in construction, he quickly completed the project. By the end of July, the hut had turned into a spacious lake house with 3 bedrooms, each with its own luxurious bathroom and a picturesque view of the lake. The modernized interior created a cozy and welcoming atmosphere. To celebrate this event, on the first weekend of August, Ron organized an open house at the lake for his friends and neighbors, inviting all of Casey's friends. The cousin arrived with one of his acquaintances, whom Ron couldn't help but notice. She was a bright blonde who looked amazing in her modest 2-piece swimsuit. Throughout the day, Ron couldn't shake the feeling that she was constantly around, laughing at his jokes and flirting with him at every opportunity. When Ron and Casey were alone in the kitchen, Casey couldn't resist teasing him. "Well, Dad, were you tempted by Patty's little bikini?" Casey asked with a grin. Ron quickly protested, "Of course not. She doesn't look more than 25 years old, but I'm still not ready to start dating. She's actually 27, and she seems very interested in you. She's already asking about your age, profession, everything that women usually find out about potential partners," Casey said with a knowing smile on her face. "I just met her today. Please don't even bring up the subject of marriage." "I've been there before, and once was more than enough," Ron replied. "I'm not hinting at anything, but it looks like she might be interested. I wouldn't mind if you went on a date with her. She's very sweet, and it would be good for you to have someone to lean on while you deal with the breakup," Casey said. "Thanks for bringing me up to date," Ron joked, turning to his daughter. "I don't think an attractive girl like her would be interested in an old guy like me, but I appreciate that you believe in me," he added. Bonnie's office was located on the top 2 floors of a busy office building in the heart of the business district. A little further down the block, there was a favorite Italian bistro where there were always a lot of visitors. Every Thursday, Bonnie and a few of her friends from work would gather there for lunch. This informal tradition led to the fact that they began to cross paths with familiar faces, as they often met the same people enjoying a midday meal. Through these chance encounters, Bonnie and her colleagues struck up friendships with employees of other companies located in the building. One busy day, there were a lot of customers in the bistro, and Bonnie's group found themselves without a table. Fortunately, an employee of Benson Advertising Agency, located on the second floor of her building, invited them to join at a large table. Graciously accepting the invitation, Bonnie and her group joined the advertising team. As introductions by first and last names took place, the conversation quickly flowed in the right direction. One woman from the advertising group stood out for her beauty and friendly behavior. Bonnie felt attracted to the young woman's infectious good humor. When the other ladies playfully teased her, a smile appeared on her face. "Not every one of us has a rich beau with a mansion on the lake," joked Mary, her colleague. "It must be wonderful to wake up when the sun is shining on the water," said another colleague. Bonnie was silent, listening with interest to their conversation. The girl nodded in agreement and added, "Especially when you have a handsome man next to you. Getting out of bed is never easy." Another woman noticed, "If it's the same man I think, his name is Ron, who picked you up after work on Thursday, then I understand why this might be a problem." She noted that Ron looks a little older than the girl but apparently is in good physical shape. The girl replied with a smile, "Ron is everything and even more. He is a kind man and a wonderful lover." Then Bonnie's friend asked the question that Bonnie had been avoiding, "Are you talking about Ron Lipton?" "Yeah, do you know Ron?" Patty asked. "He's pretty cute, don't you think?" "He was my husband." "I think we should change the subject," her colleague replied. Bonnie, leaning towards the young woman, declined the offer. "Don't be so dramatic," Bonnie insisted, holding out her hand. "I'm Bonnie Lipton." "I didn't catch your name." "Patty Lawson," the beauty replied sheepishly. Ron called his ex-wife a beauty, but Patty thought he was just blinded by love. It turned out that she underestimated all her advantages. "I hope you're not upset that I'm living with Ron now," Patty asked. "I can't blame you or him for this. You are a beautiful young woman with an amazing figure." "I can easily understand why Ron likes you," Bonnie replied. She also added, "I wonder why Casey never told me anything about you." "I can't speak for Casey," Bonnie shrugged. "You did a great job raising your daughter. She is smart, kind, and beautiful, just like you. I'm always glad when she comes to visit us," Patty praised. Later at dinner, Bonnie asked Casey, "Why didn't you mention that a beautiful woman moved in with your father?" "I'd like to know." "I didn't mean to upset you, Mom. I know how you feel about Dad," Casey explained. "It still hurts me that you were unfaithful to him, but I don't want to cause you more suffering because of your wrong decisions." "Patty, on the contrary, is happy with Dad," said the daughter. "It looks like he's finally found happiness again, and strangely enough, I'm glad to hear that Ron is doing well. He is a kind and decent person who should be with someone who really cares about him, even if that woman is not me. She may not be head over heels in love with your father, but Patty loves him very much. She has made it clear that her career is her top priority in the coming years," Bonnie said. "She has a strong desire to achieve great success in marketing," Bonnie added. "Mom, when are you going to start dating? Did you talk to your boyfriend after the conferences? Do you think you'll get along with him?" Casey asked. Bonnie confessed, "Nick is not the kind of person I would like to have a relationship with. He is shallow, a little impolite, selfish, and vain. I only saw him as a source of entertainment. I did not know that he would make my life miserable, although I perfectly understood his true nature. I shouldn't be mad at him for my vulnerabilities," Bonnie confessed. "Do you have feelings for anyone? You're as amazing as ever. I've noticed that fathers and teachers admire you and try to be polite to you at school events," Casey asked. "To be honest, I think Ron has set the bar too high for other men. The circumstances of our separation are not a secret to society. It makes women love your father and men see me as an easy target," Bonnie confessed with a melancholy smile. "It may have been easy for Nick, but I won't fall into this trap anymore," she added sadly. Casey couldn't understand how anyone could betray their husband, especially if he always showed her love and respect. "What happened? Why did everything go wrong?" the daughter asked. Bonnie confessed, "I've been agonizing over this question myself. I think I've come to take your father for granted. I was sure of his love for me, and perhaps this made me seek solace in another man. Knowing that a stable relationship awaits me at home, Ron was my rock. He was always there for me when I needed him. I naively believed that he would never leave me, no matter what happened. I could have gone off course, and he didn't even notice, still waiting for me at home. I hope you'll find a partner like Ron when you're ready to settle down and learn from my mistakes. Don't take more in a relationship than you give. Stay loyal, and honest. If you have any doubts or fears, talk about them with your spouse. I am a living example of the consequences of deception and betrayal, Bonnie said, tears streaming down her face during lunch. Sometimes Bonnie bumped into Patty, and surprisingly, she liked this woman. She felt uncomfortable with how eagerly Patty awaited any news about Ron. Ron's daughter, Casey, was hesitant to share many details about her father with Bonnie, believing that some aspects of his personal life were non-negotiable. Patty, on the other hand, was eager to discuss Ron with her friends. One day during lunch, Patty noticed Bonnie. "It's pretty obvious that you still love Ron," Patty suggested. "He never spoke ill of you, but it's obvious that you took his words to heart. I'm not going to judge you, but I have to admit that I personally would never betray a person in a relationship. I find it hard to believe that you did this," she said. "Your actions and words have always demonstrated love and respect for him. When the passion subsides and everyday life begins, it is important to remember this. I went off the right path and faced the consequences. Love is not always a stormy passion and luxurious travel," Bonnie replied. "Deciding when to pump out the septic tank or choosing the color of paint for the house sometimes seems like minor, mundane decisions, but this is only a part of life. On the other hand, Ron is a reliable businessman, a devoted friend, and a wonderful father. I will always love him despite the fact that I betrayed him in the most unforgivable way a wife is capable of. I've learned my lesson, although it's probably too late," Bonnie said. "Last night, I plucked up the courage and told Ron that I had accepted a job offer in Seattle and would be leaving in just 2 weeks. This is a fantastic opportunity for me, and I hope that in the end, he will understand and forgive me," Patty said unexpectedly. "I made it clear from the very beginning that my career is my top priority." This news upset him. "I'm telling you this so that you can understand his feelings and maybe support him if he gets upset. He's a really wonderful person, but in the end, he's not the one I need," Patty explained. "I'm sure he's going to miss you very much," Bonnie said, assuring Patty that Ron doesn't make decisions lightly. "If he invited you to live with him, it shows that he appreciates not only your appearance but also your character," Bonnie added. "He's a resilient man, and he stands up to everything," Patty said. "I put him to the test, but he proved his worth. He showed his best side. Ron will miss you, but he's a wonderful catch. I doubt his bed will be empty for a long time," Bonnie said, expressing her admiration and smiling slightly. Patty smiled back. "That's why I wanted to give you this information first. What you decide to do with it is up to you." Just a week later, Ron's best friend and unspoken partner, Dan, asked Bonnie to meet him for lunch at a bistro. The room was full of people, but they managed to get a small table in the corner. After exchanging pleasantries, Dan got straight to the point. He mentioned the land Ron had purchased on the highway by the river and said he had a potential buyer offering almost $2 million for it. Ron bought the land for a nominal sum, so the profit was significant. Dan estimated that the third share would be more than $500,000. Ron has always believed that the land has great potential for value growth, but the question remains, would you want to sell it? Bonnie asked, not understanding what role she was playing in this conversation. "That's the point," Dan replied. He expressed confidence that the company would receive more benefits if it offered a long-term lease. He suggested specifying in the contract that his company undertakes to build premises on an individual order in accordance with the needs of the tenant's business. "That sounds like Ron," Bonnie admitted, amazed at his business acumen. "I am sure that he has calculated all the numbers, and as a result, his strategy will lead to increased profits," she added. "So what's the problem?" Bonnie asked. "I think we should focus on making a quick profit from the sale of the land. Although long-term planning is important, I prefer to get the money immediately. You and I each own a third of the company's shares, so if we work together, we can put pressure on Ron to accept the offer and then distribute our share of the profits. Ron will not be harmed. Moreover, he will receive $500,000 in cash to smooth over the situation," Dan replied. Bonnie felt her frustration grow as she listened to Dan's suggestion. Are you really asking me to betray Ron's trust? Do you really think that money is more important to me than Ron's feelings? Bonnie asked incredulously. Let me clarify something for you. Ron will perceive this as a huge betrayal on the part of his own wife and closest friend. It would be the highest degree of disloyalty towards him, she added angrily, even worse than if his wife cheated on him with a young man at a conference, right? Dan chuckled. You didn't just become his ex-wife, you've already betrayed him by cheating on him, which led to your divorce. It's just an opportunity for you to take, he added, finishing his coffee. Dan thought they could make a lot of money if they pursued an affair. Trying to play the role of a faithful wife doesn't suit you, he said. Bonnie responded with pent-up anger, admitting that her betrayal of Ron was stupid and selfish. She acknowledged Ron's superiority and expressed remorse for her actions. Bonnie has vowed never to betray Ron again and is ready to give all her money just not to cause him such pain. I realized that I could not cope with the role of a wife, and now you have shown me that you are not suitable for friends or partners. Ron will control my share of the company as long as I'm alive. I'll even update the will so that he gets my share after my death. Don't doubt his business skills, he knows more than you can imagine, Bonnie said, her voice full of anger as she stood up and left money on the table for her untouched lunch. Then she looked into Dan's eyes and warned him not to try that, too. It had been almost a month when Bonnie finally opened the door and saw Ron standing on the porch. She was stunned by his sudden appearance because he had been avoiding her since she returned from the disastrous conference. Ron, come in. Is everything okay? Bonnie asked with surprise in her voice. Casey left a few minutes ago if you're looking for her. Bonnie couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement at Ron's unexpected visit. I came to talk. If you have time, Ron began, entering the familiar house that had been his home for more than 15 years. Could you spare me a few minutes? I'm not busy right now, Bonnie replied quickly. I just made coffee, why don't we sit in the kitchen? I am grateful to you for accepting me so quickly, Ron said, taking a mug of coffee. You always make great coffee, Bonnie grinned and replied. When we first got married, I didn't even know how to cook it, it took me a while to master it. Ron objected. I didn't marry you for coffee, there were other qualities in you that I found much more attractive, said Ron. I've never heard you call them qualities, Bonnie said, still smiling. Yes, you have. Serious strength, and I couldn't help but get carried away with you, Ron admitted. Patty must have completely subjugated you to her charms. There is definitely a strong chemistry between you, Bonnie remarked. She admires you very much, her high opinion of you is one of the main reasons why I'm here. Recently, one of her friends overheard your conversation with Dan at lunch. Patty told me about it before she left for the West Coast. She was impressed by your dedication and honesty. I must admit I share her opinion even though I mistreated you during the divorce, you still stubbornly rejected Dan. Many women in my place would take revenge after their husband left them so quickly, Ron said. But I would never do that to you, Ron replied. I am well aware of the dedication and diligence with which you invest money in your projects, and I understand how important they are to you. I have no doubt that you will be able to get more income from this land than Dan expects. I firmly believe that he underestimates you, Bonnie said. Your trust in me means a lot, and Patty helped me come to terms with the fact that you are my equal partner. Despite my previous behavior when I ran the business as if it belonged only to me, I understand that it's important for you to have a voice and share your ideas, Ron admitted. If you are interested in selling the property and sharing the profits, invite me, Dan is putting pressure on me. I suspect that he needs money, said Ron. Dan believes that if we sell the land, then each of us can get $500,000 without causing any harm, Bonnie replied. What do you think about it? Ron asked. I have a feeling that you have great plans for this site, which can not only bring significant profits to the company but also earn respect in society, Bonnie replied with a sense of pride, noting that Ron never chased after quick earnings. You are not only an experienced businessman but also deeply committed to society. This quality distinguishes you from people like Dan, for whom quick profits are more important than influencing society, Bonnie said. I heard that Dan approached you with an idea, but you refused to support it, Ron said thoughtfully. Ron, I completely trust you in your decisions. You always deserve my trust, and I will support you in all your business endeavors, Bonnie assured him. It may seem strange to hear this from me, knowing that you don't trust me, but it's true. I've been thinking about Dan's attempts to interfere in your business. It occurred to me that we should think about buying him out. If he does not have the means, he can agree to a fair offer. Then he will be happy, and you can continue to run things the way you want, Bonnie suggested. I've thought about it, but I don't have the money for it, Ron admitted. We can sell the house. I could rent a nice 2-bedroom apartment for myself and Casey. Over the years, we have accumulated significant capital. The house is almost fully paid off, and you've made some significant improvements. Thanks to this, we should have enough funds to buy out Dan's share, Bonnie said. Now that we're divorced, the house belongs to you. Are you ready to sell it and invest in the business? Ron asked skeptically. I'm not sure when I'll be able to make a deal to build an emergency center. I can't promise that you will make a profit on your investments in the near future or at all, Ron added. Should I worry? Bonnie's eyes narrowed. Don't forget, we've been married for 2 decades. You will definitely pay me the interest, and if, for some reason, you can't, it's okay. I owe you one. Money won't fix my restlessness, but it will help you get rid of Dan, Bonnie said with a smile. Ron suggested, if you move in with Casey and me at the lake house, I'll agree. You'll have your own room and bathroom. Bonnie replied sadly, as good as it sounds, I don't think it's going to work. It's a matter of privacy. Ron apologized, admitting that he hadn't thought about the possible drama that a date might bring to Bonnie's life. He understood that the appearance of a new partner in the house where her ex-husband lives, especially Nick, would be awkward. Bonnie assured him that she was not interested in dating and had made a conscious decision to avoid it, especially after the disastrous trip with Nick. She noted, it's very unlikely that any woman would want to stay with you overnight while your ex is sleeping in the next room. Even if you were in my house, it's very unlikely to find a woman who would agree to live with her, although I can't completely rule out that possibility, Ron replied. In the past, I've witnessed women falling in love with you, Bonnie replied. I ended our marriage because you cheated on me with that man, and then I let Patty move in with me. My actions weren't a good example for Casey, were they? My only excuse is that I've been struggling with depression and loneliness, Ron mused aloud. My self-confidence suffered when another man took my wife away from me, but Patty helped me restore it, Ron added sadly. I'm sorry that I hurt your ego, and I wish this had never happened. I don't blame you for getting carried away with Patty. She's a wonderful woman. You are single and free to pursue any relationship you want. I understand that I have never apologized for my actions. It was my mistake, and I take full responsibility for it. I ruined everything, and I'm really sorry, Bonnie said with a tremor in her voice. I deeply apologize for the pain and inconvenience caused to you, she said, lowering her head. Bonnie, you really hurt me. I have always been devoted to you. I've dedicated my life to you and Casey. I've gone from feeling like I have everything to feeling like a complete failure. Patty helped me realize that while I may not have been the perfect husband, I wasn't the reason for your infidelity. If you weren't satisfied with our marriage or our intimate life, you could have told me about it. I would have done everything in my power to fix the situation if I had known, Ron admitted. I was stupid, Ron, but I wasn't unhappy. You were an amazing husband, a fantastic father to Casey, and a passionate lover. I lost my way, and I think I deserve to feel unhappy. Strangely, I find a strange sense of satisfaction in my suffering. It's like I'm atoning for my mistakes, Bonnie confessed. Why don't you at least come and see the lake house? I would appreciate your thoughts and opinions on it, Ron said. I've incorporated some of the concepts we've been talking about all these years into our rebuilding projects. I think you'll be happy with the result, Ron suggested. Casey has a volleyball match in a couple of hours. Can I take advantage of this offer at a later time? Bonnie asked. Let's take a look at it before the game. We can go together. I can drop you there, Ron offered. Aren't you afraid that people might think we're back together if we come together? You usually sit as far away from me as possible, Bonnie said. I may have behaved badly, but in my defense, I will say that you also treated me and our marriage badly. To be honest, I was more lenient with you than you probably would have been with me in the same situation, Ron admitted. We both know that your settlement offer was too generous, Bonnie replied. It seems that your kindness has done you good. We're thinking of selling the house to buy out Dan's share, Ron complained. I can't believe you're ready to do this, he said. Ron, you can take whatever you want. You've always been honest with me, and I trust you completely. And even though I know I deserve it, I know you won't hurt me, Bonnie said, squeezing his hand. Let me show you the lake house, Ron suggested, to change the subject and give himself time to calm his emotions. When he showed Bonnie the house, she was amazed at the remodeling. You really did a fantastic job, she said. Casey's spacious room has a private bathroom that many teenage girls would envy. When Ron brought Bonnie into the second bedroom, she realized it was time to bring up an unpleasant topic. The room was beautiful, with an equally impressive bathroom, but Bonnie couldn't accept the idea of staying here. I can't live here, Ron, she said. Seeing you every day is just a painful reminder of what I've lost. Let's sell the house, and I'll find an apartment. I'll be fine. We have to go to Casey's game soon, Bonnie reminded. Ron insisted, let me give you a tour of the master bedroom. It's the biggest one in the house. I'm sure you'll be impressed. It's just amazing, Bonnie admired the room and praised Ron. You always do such a fantastic job. Thanks to your attention to detail, your business is booming. Ron asked, if you had this room, would you agree to stay with me and Casey? I can't imagine not seeing you every day. I didn't want the house to belong only to me. I was hoping that we could share it, Ron explained, his voice clearly showing nervous tension. Bonnie raised her eyebrows in surprise, studying Ron's face. So you're suggesting we share your bed? She asked incredulously. Ever since I found out about your infidelity and left, I feel terrible. I miss you terribly, to the point that sometimes it causes me physical pain. You made a huge mistake, and although your relationship with Patty eased the pain of your betrayal for a while, it couldn't completely erase it, Ron said. I hope that we can overcome all this negativity and restore our relationship. I will not allow myself to be used anymore, Ron stated firmly. If you plan to continue punishing me, I will not tolerate it. If I do decide to return, I will be faithful to you and expect the same from you. No more other women in your life. It's either me or nothing, Bonnie replied. I have worked tirelessly to regain my self-esteem, and I will not let it disappear, Ron said. I care about you, Ron, but we have to be on the same page. Otherwise, I'm leaving, Bonnie insisted. Casey was stunned when her parents suddenly entered the hall together, quickly approaching them. She urgently whispered, Mom, Dad, what does this mean? Before she could finish her question, Ron smiled and nodded, overwhelmed with emotion. Casey hugged her mother tightly and whispered in her ear, Welcome home, Mom. I love you, but please don't ever cheat on Dad again. You have always had a desire to improve in this area and at the same time receive a decent income. Do you have any plans for this property? Bonnie asked. Ron admitted that he is negotiating with the main hospital to conclude a long-term lease agreement for the construction of an emergency care center on this site. It may not be as profitable as the luxury condominium project that Dan's company stands for, but it will still bring decent profits and provide a guaranteed construction contract. This company will not only provide an opportunity to find a job but will also contribute to developing positive relationships in society, Ron replied. Bonnie replied somewhat smugly, I had a feeling it would be something like that.